Guys, we have open house right now, which means anybody wants to share anything, it's the time after we answer the questions that we have in the parking lot. Right? Some of them may be directed to the speakers themselves, so why don't the speakers come in and see what they can do about those questions.
I think we should have a round of applause for the speakers.
All right, do it right now. Okay, we'll take one by one. Can we? I'll go. First one. Question to Avinash. What is the ideal team size for Scrum/Scrum Ban? Rather than Avinash answering it, I think someone else can do a pretty good job here. What is the ideal team size of Scrum?
8 to 9.
Between 3 and 9.
It should be, it depends on the Scrum size. So
Yeah.
I will probably somewhere around
6 plus minus 3.
10 to 12 max.
10 to 12? How many of us agree with 10 to 12? All right. How many of us agree to 3 to 9?
As long as the team is mature, it's fine.
Okay, as long as the team is matured, how about 100? All right. Okay, it is 3 to 9, right? Which is optimal. 3 is too less? 5 to 9? Okay, 7 plus minus 2.
Which is yours? What do you think about it?
I think it's 7 plus or minus 2. Per Scrum team.
And what about Scrum Ban, Avinash? What's the team size of Scrum Ban?
So Scrum Ban, I think, is limited more by the nature of work, or it's dictated more by your nature of work. If you are doing product development where you need a relatively higher number of interactions between the people, you do approach the same limit that Scrum has, right? Maybe a little larger, but pretty much the same. If you're doing, let's say, production support, the team can be substantially larger. You can easily have 16 to 20, and that'd be fine because the swim lanes don't interact as much in production support. Otherwise, I think the number between Scrum and Scrum Ban for product development would be fairly close. So I wouldn't go higher than 10 or 12.
Okay, next one. If a team is geographically split, can pair programming be done across different region/location?
We discussed this one in our what I call the closed space,
Right.
because it was in the corridor, right? Not very open. So we got the closed space, and I said, well, give it a try, experiment with your team, and I always encourage my teams to take risks and think about, well, if I take this risk, what's the worst that could possibly happen, right? What could you lose by trying it? But what could you gain if it worked? And imagine the relationship you'll build with your mucker in the UK or the US. So I would just say try it, and please, I've seen it work, and I've seen it work not so well. So I think try it, and please tweet me and let me know how you get on, or send me an email.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Can programming be done for geographical teams? Yes.
Use Link, use your WebEx, screen share.
Next one. Again, for Avinash, did Scrum Ban affect innovation or quality because of pressure to finish fast?
So I'm going to share for a couple of minutes, if you guys will indulge me, a frame that I find very, very useful. Okay, so I got off a train, high-speed train in Shinjuku in Tokyo, and I see two guys run up with calipers and a measuring rod. Okay, and they run up to the train and they are measuring the distance between the line on the platform and where the door of the train is. Okay, and for a train that goes at 180 miles an hour, they want the distance between the door and the marking on the platform to be less than 6 millimeters. Right? And so I asked my interpreter, I said, okay, so what are these guys doing? Because they were, it doesn't stop for very long. They came in and they quickly do that. He said, they're measuring the distance, and there are just 2 countries in the world where they even bother measuring that. Okay, Japan and Germany. And he says that the way they do it is actually very, very different. In Germany, the train driver doesn't go to college. He goes into an internship out of high school. He spends 4 years studying about, I don't know what he studies. He knows a great deal about the trains, the models and everything, and then He's an apprentice train driver, and after a while he becomes a train driver, and he can bring in a train at 200 miles an hour and park it just about that. In Japan, they put a beacon on the platform and they put a radar on the train, right? And when the train approaches, there's a light that comes up in the cabin, and the driver knows that when the light comes up, he presses that button. Okay, so it's one outcome, but it's achieved very differently. Okay, and to me, a lot of the questions that we're seeing here and a lot of the discussions we had in the corridor reflect these two alternative approaches, right, to achieving one outcome. And a lot of questions that we talk about, I see a couple of questions out there that talk about, velocity, how do I measure this? Almost give me a red button to press, right? That when I come to the platform, let me press that button and it stops right there. And that's what a lot of customers seem to be expecting. I'll share my bias, okay? I'll share my bias and my frame. And again with a story. As you can imagine, my team is sick of my stories. But so I was hosting the Olympus corporate strategy manager, and he wanted to dial a number in Japan, in Electronic City, from my previous employer. So I go to the reception and I give that number and say, call this number in Japan. And the receptionist, she doesn't know what the Japan country code is, and there's a 0, and she tries putting the 0 in and it doesn't go through. And this gentleman turns to me and says, Avinash, this is the future of your country. Is this guy a Japanese supremacist? I mean, or is he just being rude? But he says, this is the same thing that happened to Japan in the 50s and the 60s. The economy grew so quickly that it very, very quickly pulled people to a level way above their level of competence or incompetence. People were doing jobs that were 1 or 2 levels above what they would do in an economy where there was more time to train people for the particular job, right? That the receptionist would go to a school where she would be taught, she'd have to pass an exam with country codes, for example. So he says the way Japan solved that problem was by building all the intelligence into the system. And he says, so if you go to a Japanese company, there'd be a world map. You scroll, click Japan, it enters the country code. Okay, so the amount of skill that it takes to park a train correctly is very different if you build the intelligence into the system. And so a lot of the questions we're talking about here, sometimes we talk about culture, do we spend a lot of time investing, building, etc. On the other side, we have this view of agile, and I think Scrum Bangalore is a great place to talk about this, right? Is that the customers already decided on a budget, they've decided on a schedule, ramp up 200 people in 3 months, and I want this project delivered in 9 months. That's a very different culture, a very different outcome in a services company than if you're looking at somebody doing an agile transformation. And both these are happening in India, in Bangalore, as we speak. And I just wanted to share that as a frame, right? So this question about innovation, it started me off on this ant, is really to do with what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to accomplish innovation? Is that the outcome you want? Or do you have a project and you need to execute that project in an iterative manner as quickly, as efficiently as possible, right? So I just wanted to leave that out there, saying you can't have everything. The culture that the Japanese model builds is very different from the culture that the German model builds, and we need to keep that in mind. It's much harder to get serious, substantial innovation out of the train drivers who've been trained to press a button, but at the same time you can scale that pretty fast.
Wouldn't that be the combination with day-to-day work and the innovation which is coming based on the work which you do? Like
So,
product improvement ideas or whatever you'll be doing.
yes. So what is innovation, right? I mean, if there are people doing technical jobs, there's more likely to be technical innovation there. It's very unlikely to get product innovation out of, if you look at our communities of practice in India, we tend to be technically oriented. We identify ourselves as Java developers rather than a banking domain developers, is the old chestnut. So our innovations will tend to be Java innovations or technical innovations rather than something for the banking or the airline industry. It's changing, but it's still early days.
Coming back, I drifted and I completely lost the point. The question was, do we lose quality because you have a board where it says his task has been moved and the person will feel, why is my task still there? I have to work faster, thereby reducing the quality. So in a crux, could you relate your entire story to, because I think I lost context there.
Can I add to that?
Please.
I'll just say that I think you get a bit mixed up between Kanban and Scrum Ban. So the main benefit that I see always in Scrum Ban is there should still be a definition of done, and that's your measure of quality. So the quality shouldn't slip because you're always enforcing the definition of done as a Scrum Master or Agile.
Also, when you move from one stage to another, if the quality fails, it is going to come to the earlier stage. Again, you are going to work on it. Rather, you finish, take your time, finish it, and send it.
And in fact, I find that the definition of done is better enforced in Scrum Ban because you haven't got that pressure on the final day to make sure everything's kind of past that definition because you're doing it much more gradually, you know, in your curve where everything is like.
Yes.
Alright.
Yes. The risk of everything integrating at once and then something failing is slightly lower in Scrum Master.
Okay.
Question to you. So reading some articles on Scrum Ban mentioned the prescribed thing to reduce the burnout of the team and control attrition. They said that after you practice Scrum Ban for a certain number of iteration, give some time for an hackathon or something like that. Is that what we follow? I mean, from the service industry standpoint, because I have a lot of experience, is it being followed or it's just theoretical thing that sets up in the
You mentioned something very similar, right? That there needs to be this fire break almost between.
But with the current model, as you said, you have certain time and then the agile team is working and then we have a delivery to be made. But because I have that problem in my organization because the iterations are very fast and we've been practicing for last 1.5 years now, doing monthly cycle releases.
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out a way where we can sort of sort out.
Yes. So I think this is good practice, but I don't know how much it's implemented because in reality, what seems to be happening is that we accept without question a certain level of attrition because we see that as natural, and we say, you know what, it's the nature of the game. Yeah. If we took that more seriously, we would start thinking about what we are doing in order to make sure this doesn't happen. And I don't see that as much.
It will be like a normal. Sorry.
In my previous company, what we did is not hackathon. Rather, we keep a planning or requirement understanding phase, where it is a little bit lenient period, but there is a delivery that you need to understand and you need to come up with a particular set of things like estimation or things like high-level estimations. This period, team takes leaves, teams revamp, recharge their batteries. This is during the start of the project. That helps, like if you give a week like that, you get both. Team stays and cool. At the same time, you get your estimate of ballpark estimates.
I think there's a culture shift that still needs to happen in India. It's happened more in the Western world where there's that kind of nurturing of individuals and kind of that retention, whereas, like you said, it's a different model still over India. But I think that will change over time, and you'll get that culture change, which will see you in a much better position long term.
Yes,
but it's about education.
Not to attack a good friend here. If you heard what he said that people take leave in that period, right? So in the UK, for example, people take leave when they want to take leave or they need to take leave. It isn't about there is a slack period when we permit people to take leave, to which they're entitled to. Right?
Yeah. See, the regular ones are there. This is exactly the complete team goes out.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, this is complete team. Some days there won't be any 3-4 developers will not of 7 people. 4 developers will not be there. That kind of leaves, but individual leaves anytime.
Yes. So not to your context, but I've seen companies where they say
they don't
you
give
can't
it.
take
Yes,
leave now.
they cannot give it.
Okay, can we move on to the next one, please? All right.
Shut up.
Can we have this posted on your mouth and there's a kid birthday?
Which one? This poster?
Do that.
Okay, next one. What do you suggest? Developer becoming Scrum Master or product owner becoming Scrum Master as we have resource shortage for a period of 3 months as deadline is nearing?
That's a good question. But whosoever wrote that, I just want one question from the product owner becoming Scrum Master. That is he a product owner or a Scrum Master or both?
No, he's a BA actually.
Okay. He is becoming so what see, only one problem in that is if a product owner becomes a Scrum Master, during that period of 3 months or whatever number, he should be a Scrum Master, not the product owner.
Correct.
If he is going to be a product owner come Scrum Master, it is typical. Sorry. The reason is, as a product owner, you need to push. As a Scrum Master, you need to block. One person cannot do this.
I would look at the team and perhaps look at a rotation so that everyone within the team, assuming they're not a really immature team, take a sprint as Scrum Master, because they'll see it all from a different perspective and you'll actually get some great benefit from that, rather than drafting the product owner into that role.
Okay. And developer becoming a Scrum Master is good, but that developer should understand that his development time will reduce. Okay. So you need to balance it. Okay.
Not just reduce to zero.
Reduce to zero. Some partial the Scrum Masters are like 40-60 is the.
But I would say that the developer becoming a Scrum Master should come out of the developer mindset, right?
Yes.
And become a Scrum Master himself, because he has to be in terms of coaching team and protecting team. Most of the time, there's a team that doing estimates during their planning, and the developer says in the guts feeling, yeah, I think I can do it, right? And even if he's a Scrum Master of the team, he should be doing something else, rather than allowing the team to pull that story into their sprint,
Okay.
right? So it's a mindset change again. Another question. Product owner joining daily Scrum, what are the pros and cons?
It's absolutely
Hello.
allowed.
It's definitely allowed.
Youth,
Unless he keeps quiet.
yes. He need to be like a just a spectator.
Yeah, a mute spectator.
A mute spectator.
But let me ask, what's the value he gets from a mute spectator? What's the value does he get by
Yeah.
being a mute spectator?
Can
What the
I?
value he's getting? What he's contributing to the team?
Okay, what he is contributing. Let me come to that part, which will be the pros. Suppose you might be discussing some questions. You might need to talk to PO immediately. You don't need to wait till the Scrum completes. You can take immediately right there. He can give the gist, he can schedule a meeting immediately. Otherwise, say for example in a distributed way, PO is in USA, you are in India. You need to wait for his time zone. Okay, that's the delay, that's the impediment. Okay, he need to speak when there is a question directed to him, not otherwise. If the PO is clear on that, he can always join, else it's a big no. Because PO standing there as a supervisor will demoralize. Demoralize.
Yeah, and that's where marketing comes in, okay? Somebody spoke about marketing, the team member boasting himself in meetings. That's where marketing comes in, right? And then team loses their interest, the culture goes for a toss.
Yes.
You see your customer and then you want to talk to them frequently, even though you did 1 hour work, you say you did a lot of things, right? You boost yourself as a better person in front of them. That's the cons, by the way. Anything else anybody wants to add? Okay, next one. Story points are not reflections of estimate in time. How do we release plan them? Okay, story points are not reflections of time estimates. How do we release plan them? How do we do a release planning then?
We still do release planning based on story points, not on ours.
What we would commit to is by the end of this month or by the end of this quarter, we'll be able to release 30 story points based on our velocity or based on our target quantity. Right. So instead of saying we have 10 hours of work that gets completed every day as a team, what we say is as a team, sprint on sprint, we materialize 10 story points or we materialize 20 story points, and that would mean if we have a backlog of 60 story points, we would need 3 sprints.
Yeah, I think it got covered in the release. I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
You covered it beautifully.
no longer.
Is he gone? Is he?
Yeah, he had to leave
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
sore throat.
You know, you look at the 6 months previous. You look at what your best result was, your worst result, and the medium, and so then you take the average, and then that becomes your prediction going forward for your release planning.
Yeah.
It's an estimate like anything else, but it's kind of, it should be quite accurate, especially for quite a mature team.
And guys, it is again even time estimate. We never achieved it. We never achieved it. So where it's just an estimate, a starting point, not a ending point. So whether it is a story point or a time, it doesn't matter. How much we can deliver, just we need to commit that.
Right, convincing answer, everybody?
They have a question on top of that. So you also have to work with multiple teams which have different references for story points. And how do you accommodate all of them to the release?
Velocity is also relative. So, like for each team, there will be a velocity of their own. So then you will be able to estimate.
Yeah. So you can use that tool wouldn't allow it, but if you had a tool that allowed different velocities for different teams, you could do it. Otherwise, you've got to have some sort of stats junkie who can kind of relate that team's point is 1.5 of the other team's point. And you start having, I think in the project working on, we have carrots and aubergines, and I'm not sure what else to relate to the different. It becomes a bit of a mess, but it is possible.
I can add. So normally we use 2 of this, so either you can go for a story point normalization, there is different methods that you can use for it, or you go for a statistic aggregation, where for a particular domain on a vertical you say that having multiple teams that this particular I usually train and deliver this velocity, combining both, which might be plus minus, and then plan release.
The purpose, that's why a lot of teams don't use the word story points, so that they can relate it to a team. So they use jelly beans or they use carrots.
I can add to that. So we have a similar setup. So what we do is we focus on feature output. So what the team is delivering as features. So what we focus on is what the delivery is in terms of features, how the team's organised velocities up as a team, and then that's progress is monitored on that. So the story point don't need to come into play.
Okay, next one. For any project, a service provider has to provide estimate in terms of hours and dollars. How can this be achieved in agile projects using relative estimations?
Some we use t-shirt sizing, and we say t-shirt sizing we normally keep it in a range. When we commit to the customer, say, because this is only for if you need an hour, otherwise it is not at all followed anywhere. We say, okay, XS is 1 to 10, 1 to 10. L is some 100 to 200. We keep it some numbers which is agreeable to us, which is communicated to the client also. That we communicate. So when I say I can deliver this much of story points or t-shirt sizing, that these are L, this is XS, this is M. We give a legend saying that this is what the range is, and we always keep it in the highest limit. That's how we plan it. Again, it's a ballpark, and we put a clause that this is just a ballpark which is having a range of 42 plus or minus 40 deviation.
Another question, similar, how to manage fixed price?
No.
It's a similar question.
That is a day's.
Full decision.
Yeah, okay, just to add to what you're saying, the first statement of the manifesto says, Agile manifesto says, customer collaboration and contract negotiation. So what we need to go back and think is that we are collaborating with the customer by becoming a partner or vendor, not really signing a contract. Of course, that is required, it's a legal requirement, but not a technical requirement. There's nothing that can technically bind a product or a project, right? It can legally do, but technically when it comes, all that we need to keep in our minds is that we are collaborating with customers. And if that is the mindset that we go in with, there will be a legal department of our of our client and a legal department of our company who will talk to each other in their terms, and we'll be open to talk to each other in our terms.
Let's look into this. So what happens majority of the time is we have got clients with so many vendors. So client calls for this, if you check and this is a problem, I would like somebody to address this. And the RFIs and everything comes from clients, right? From vendor. Now one of the bases for selection of this particular vendor is based on the cost. Sure. It doesn't matter how great you work, it doesn't matter when you can tell you. Dollar value is something which is one of the biggest parameters for decision. Those kind of cases, how are we going to address it?
One of the factors, right? Not the
one of the major factors.
Yes, but what also matters is how you pitch, how you make a sales pitch.
Yeah, because if we are delivering service, we cannot say that I'm going to show you this. No. Everybody is going to say that I'm the best. So one of the differentiators becomes the cost.
But perhaps what I've seen is maybe you get the business originally on cost, but then you grow that trust with the company and you start showing the value added, and then you can gradually get more away from contract and get to collaboration. But it's a journey between both parties.
So both has to mature.
Yeah, you have to start, and it's a gradual process to where you both know you need to be there, but you've got to build that trust between the two parties together. I think it'd be naive to think you would go in with a new client and just say, yeah, we're just going to bill you on hours.
So I think, and I'm going to say that in response to the next question, which is how do you manage a fixed price agile project, which is exactly your question. And there is no such thing as a fixed price agile project, right? Because the whole point of doing agile is to be able to deal with evolution and emergence. And at a fixed price, at least from a commercial term, it really says is that for this bit of work, you will do it in a certain dollar value. So often what we see is projects move away from being agile projects to being iterative development projects. You're developing and delivering in 2-week periods, but the question we need to ask is it really agile? You may be following a lot of the things that define agile, but often it's just iterative development. You're doing it in 2-week periods, giving it to them. If there's a change, you raise that as a CR. So is that really agile is something for us to think. Yeah, and there is value in doing iterative development. I honestly believe overdoing waterfall, but there's more value in moving to a more collaborative or trusting relationship, and that's where a lot of the agile benefits come.
So one point there is many organizations I have seen is they enter into fixed price contracts, with an open-ended requirements listing. That I think, what you said is right, but on the other side, entering into a fixed price contract where requirements are not, to any extent frozen, is not a recommended thing to do.
It's not a recommended thing.
So otherwise it becomes fragile. Fixed price agile becomes fragile. So I think just wanted to add
what's put up on there. It says that walking on water and as well as doing all these things they will work if both are frozen, if requirements and water is frozen. Otherwise it's really hard.
Okay, what are we doing for time? Okay, we've got one more. Will enforcing few processes help apart from empowering the team? So I don't know who wrote that, but they may have got the wrong kind of impression from the slide. Because what I said was interactions and individuals and interactions are more important than tools and processes. Not that you don't need a process. I'm just saying focus on the right thing first. Focus on the people and the interactions, and then build the process from. So that's your foundation, right? And then the process will help and add to that, but you build that gradually, rather than what I would say 95% of organisations I've worked with do, which is build the process first and then try and fit the individuals and interactions underneath. And of course you can't build the foundations once they're, or at least it's very difficult to build foundations once you've built the pyramid. Does that answer the question?
and built it in cast iron with steel granite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really put,
That's exactly how you do it.
Another one, if the team is not mature enough and not able to correlate between story point and hours, how can they pick stories for a time-boxed iteration? They can't, right?
No.
It's not possible.
That was the one I took.
Just to,
Okay, if the team is not mature enough,
Well,
a couple of minutes about that.
sure. Will enforcing few processes?
no, we're done that one.
That
timing.
probably would apply for a team who is just starting, right? If you're on your first sprint, what would you do? It's pretty much asking how long will it take for me to travel from here to the airport if I leave now, right? I would never know the exact time until I start my car and start in that direction, right? So what's important is that I get started with probably a very rough idea. Say, let's target 10 story points, let's target 50 story points, we'll see how we do, and we will improve over iteration. So what's important is if it's your first sprint, if that is what the question really was intended for, if it's your first sprint, just get started. Have a random number, pick up something that that all the team agrees on based on their gut, and say this is the story point that we want to achieve, start and iterate over that.
I would just like to add to that it's about education really. I spend a lot of time banging my head against brick walls with stakeholders who say, they're expecting the kind of velocity to be accurate straight away. And I have to educate them that it doesn't work like that, right? A new team will maybe deliver 40 points, then 10, then 20, and it's not until kind of 6 months in maybe, or less or more depending on the team, that you'll get that kind of stable velocity. That's why we talked earlier about taking the good, the bad, and the individual when you're trying to do your average to try and iron that out.
Would you agree that it wouldn't take more than 6 months? Typically, in 6 months, you
Yeah,
get a
6
fair
months,
idea of what it should be.
Maybe less, but
Maybe less, but
Yeah.
4 to 5 continuous sprint, I would
yes,
say.
I think that.
depends on your sprint methods. Well, of course.
Yeah,
We're doing
I'm saying 3 weeks at an average. If you do 5 sprint
There is one
back
more
to back
question.
would give you an
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Give you an idea.
Yeah, I got it. CMMI.
Yeah.
Okay guys, last question. I don't know where I kept it.
Are you sure that's the last? Or are you hiding it?
Okay, at organization level scaling of Scrum, what do you do? Safe, Scrum of Scrum, less, Agile, CMMI? Nice question.
Lots of acronyms.
Try
So the point I made from that, and I haven't tried all of those, so I can't answer it fully, but I'm a bit of a purist, so I like the Scrum of Scrums. But I think the thing that why Scrums doesn't work for a lot of organisations is they've got the wrong people in the Scrum of Scrums. It should be a representative from each of the Scrums, not the product owner or the Scrum Master, or even worse, like a project manager that you see. I've seen in the organisation where I'm working with at the minute, they have a Scrum of Scrums of project managers, and I'm like, scratching my head thinking, you haven't got anyone who's doing the work in this meeting. What do you guys talk about for half an hour? I refuse to go on principle, right? So it's about getting the right people in the Scrum of Scrums. I don't know if you've worked on any of the others.
A different perspective is Hinduism better than Christianity if you want enlightenment, right? I mean, so these are all ways for you to become agile. If you stick to the scripture of any one of these, you have to make it work to your context, right? So these are, if you're beginning, it doesn't matter. Pick anyone, start on the journey, and adapt through the journey. I've seen organizations that treat these like literal scriptures. It says you must do this. Okay, paint by numbers. Join dot 1 and 2. It won't work.
And again, theme for me today, concentrate on the individuals again. The process really will form itself if you concentrate on the right
If you have
ones.
the right individuals, absolutely.
They'll come to the right decision.
All right, open house done. Any other questions?